All right, this video is about observational learning, the third and final type of learning. So, observational learning is basically learning by observing others. Now, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but once upon a time, people really didn't think about the fact that you could learn by watching other people. Up until the 1960s, everybody just kind of figured that you learned through classical and operant conditioning. Then a guy by the name of Albert Bandura came around. And Albert Bandura started to think about particularly kids and how kids, when they watch other people, because kids are constantly watching other people, adults, other kids, doesn't matter. And he looked at, and said, I really think that kids can learn things by watching other people. And specifically, he was looking at learning aggression. So Albert Bandura, basically he has his social learning theory, and I have no idea why, but for some reason in your book they don't actually use the phrase social learning theory. But I do know that the AP gurus do like that phrase, so make sure you associate a social learning theory with Albert Bandura. So, Bandura said that unlike Skinner and Pavlov, he believed that people think about behavior and consequences. He really thought about that, people really start to think about it and associate things, whereas Skinner and Pavlov looked at it as kind of a reflex, and it's an unconscious thing, and you're not thinking about what you're actually doing. Bandura says no, people actually, give this some thought, and that they can learn by observing other people. His classic experiment was the Bobo doll experiment. This is the one, they described it in your book, where he actually had videotaped some adults going and beating up on this Bobo doll. And the Bobo doll, if you don't remember, is one of those giant blow up kind of like inflatable, almost like a punching bag, and it's weighted on the bottom, so if you hit it, it kind of just sits there and rocks back and forth. Okay, it doesn't completely knock over. It's kind of like a weeble wobble. That's what I think of it as. So, weeble wobbles don't fall down. Maybe it's just me. So, at any rate, he videotaped these adults going and beating up on this Bobo doll. And then he had two groups of kids. And he had one group of kids that he would go and show the video to. And then he'd bring them to this room where they had all these toys, including a Bobo doll. And then he would go and get them interested, and then he'd take the toys away. And the kids would go and get mad and would beat up on this Bobo doll. And then he had another group of kids where he didn't show them the video at all, and he brought them into this same kind of room. And they would just play nicely with these toys, and they'd play nicely with this Bobo doll. So he was very interested in the fact that the kids watched this modeled behavior. So they modeled this behavior for the kids of, beating up on this Bobo doll. And then he took them to this room, and he saw the kids imitating and even expanding on what the model did, what the adult did. And he was, shocked and amazed. And it was, very groundbreaking work for the time in 1961. So I do have a video showing the Bobo doll experiment.
The segment you're about to see is taken from an early experiment on learning of aggressive styles of behavior through modeling. Children watched a filmed adult perform novel aggressive acts toward a inflated doll, and the physical aggression was accompanied by novel hostile remarks. We later measured how much of this modeled aggression the children had learned just by watching. Now, the measurement of learning of aggression uses simulated targets rather than live ones. The model pummeled the doll with a mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down, and beat it.
I don't know what is with this video that it's kind of like a spotlight. So this is one of the kids that watched that video that we just watched. So look at him. He's, beating up on this Bobo doll.
It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
So even though the adult didn't show the modeling of using the gun, the kid's still using this gun and beating up this Bobo doll. And some people said, well, maybe it's just boys. Well, look at this girl.
The room contained varied play materials, and children could choose to play aggressively or non-aggressively. The children devised new ways of hitting the doll. Now, the object of interest was the novel aggressive acts, not punching the doll. Children in the control group who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling never exhibited the novel forms of aggression. Here's a creative embellishment. A doll becomes a weapon of assault.
This girl's going to town. Okay, so keep in mind that they were all going and showing all these signs of aggression that they hadn't shown signs
John B.
before.
Watson,
Oops, hold on.
known for establishing the Behavior School of Psychology, carried out one.
Okay, sorry. So they were showing signs of aggression that they had not shown before. So Bandura proved that modeling does affect kids. All right, so application of observational learning. What we found was that and Bandura and others after him found that we can have good effects of observational learning. Prosocial, positive role models can have positive effects. So, for example, anybody watch Sesame Street when you were a kid? What's the point of Sesame Street? Well, part of it is obviously to learn, your numbers, your shapes, your colors, your letters. But the other part of it is, to model some good behavior. So, for example, it shows, for example, how to share. Common things that a 3 or 4-year-old may encounter, and what do they do in order to combat that problem, okay? Those are modeling good behavior. Another example, you ever watch that movie from the 90s, Schindler's List? It's old now, but it was a really good movie. It was done in black and white, except for there was one girl with a red coat, and it was about the Holocaust. And it was based on the life of a real guy named Oskar Schindler. And Oskar Schindler was a Nazi, but he had good, positive role models and positive examples in his own parents. And so by the time the Holocaust came around, he recognized that this is not a good thing. And so he actually saved over 1,000 Jewish lives. There are lots of other examples of Germans that did the same thing, that they went and helped Jewish neighbors and friends, and they saved lives that way. Now, unfortunately, there are negative effects. Antisocial effects can also happen from negative role models. You probably have heard a lot about the level of violence in TV and movies and games, and how that affects kids. The kids will oftentimes imitate the observed acts and oftentimes become desensitized to the violence. They've seen it so often that it's just old hat and it's not that big of a deal anymore, which is unfortunate. I have this little cartoon to show you. It says, if you keep watching that violence, your head is going to explode, splattering your mushy brains all over my nice clean carpet. And all the thing the kid has to say is, cool. Okay? We become desensitized to violence. All right, that's all I have to say about observational learning. Let me know if you have any questions.